Demographics. Brazil is a country that has a young population, dynamic, with relative good skill, but much more needs to be done for education and skilling and human capital. And as I pointed out, the only way to survive and thrive in the world of AI, machine learning, and technology is to be able to have people that have the skills to be able to actually become more productive with this technology rather than becoming obsolete. Much more, of course, needs to be done for skilling people for the jobs and the industries of the future. I talked about political instability and rise of populism and a backlash against liberal democracy. Is happening in the United States, is happening in many parts of the world. We'll see what will be the results of the US election, but it happened also in Brazil. There was an attempted, if not a coup, of trying to take over your Congress. But luckily, this is a country that in the last few decades, having gone back to democracy, has created institution of governance, formally and informally, like civil society, and I think it's a resilient and a successful democracy. So there may be people who are autocratic, there may be parts of society that are divided, but I believe that actually democracy is going to be thriving in Brazil compared to other parts of the world where they're becoming seriously more autocratic. And finally, as I pointed out, AI implies a major challenge that implies you have to invest even more than before in education, in skills, in human capital, in training the people, not just young people, but even existing workers for the jobs and the industry of the future. There are also economic challenges. Some of them are macroeconomic. Like in many other parts of the world, budget deficits are very high and they're structurally high, and it's challenging for the political system, regardless of who is in power, to reduce them. And we see it daily in Brazil, and it happens and has happened for a long time, given the fragmentation of the political system. Luckily, in Brazil, there is still an independent central bank that's taken seriously its commitment to low inflation, and therefore it tightened monetary policy sooner and faster to prevent inflation from becoming out of hand. So the macroeconomic picture of Brazil is mixed, with fiscal not being ideal, but with stable monetary institution, flexible exchange rates, and having overall a macroeconomic framework, even with fiscal rules, that if implemented implies macro stability. And macro stability is important. Macro stability is, however, only a necessary but not sufficient condition for strong economic growth. To have strong economic growth, you need to have higher potential growth. And that requires structural reforms that, unfortunately, even in Brazil, are occurring too slowly compared to what is desirable and optimal. You have to reform the state and the bureaucracy. You have to deregulate parts of the economy. You have to invest into greater infrastructure, private and public. You have to have better governance and less corruption. You have to invest into innovation and technology of the future. The good news about Brazil, I would say, is that it has a comparative advantage in natural resources that are going to be in high demand in the future, whose price is going to go be higher, and that's positive for the terms of trade of Brazil. It has also a strong entrepreneurial class, a sophisticated financial system. So if the macroeconomic is stable, if you have good governance, and if there is gradually over time the kind of structural reform that increase potential growth, Brazil can do well, even in this world where there is a lot of risk, lots of uncertainty, lots of instability. So there are risks, there are threats everywhere, globally, regionally, nationally, but for every problem, there is also a solution. However, all these solutions imply what? Sacrifices in the short run for the common benefit over the medium long term. Those sacrifices have to be done individually. Each of us should be changing our habits to reduce our carbon footprint. Can be done at the level of community, at the level of country, but also at the global level, because we need cooperation to achieve global public goods, like on climate change, on pandemic, on financial stability, on global security, on maintaining free trade and competitiveness, and so on and so on. Unfortunately, in a world in which there are global rivalries, the ability to achieve that cooperation is challenged compared to the past. But when I look around the world, I see young people that worry about their future. They will be the one who will have to pay the cost of climate change, of pandemic, of social political instability, of high debts, of other things of that sort. And young people care about the future the way maybe people old like me don't care as much. And therefore, there's an opportunity to organize yourself individually as a civil society or politically to address all of these challenges. So while I worry about the things can go wrong, I want to finish on an optimistic note that for each one of these threats, there are solutions. And if we work together, individually, collectively, nationally, and globally, we can address them for a better future ahead of us.